Tomorrow it will be 2 years since the unspeakable October the 7th atrocities, the unprovoked terrorist invasion into southern Israel from Gaza that killed 1,200 people, saw another 250 taken hostage, 100 of them have since been killed, 20 remain in captivity, presumably alive, and the rest were rescued or released in deals after being raped, tortured and starved. Some pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel protesters, incredibly, had been planning to stage demonstrations tomorrow. We will see what happens. But the Prime Minister had this to say today.
And I think that tomorrow is not a day for demonstrations. I think that for people who engage and want to support or say they're supporting the Palestinian cause, it will not advance it. It will set it back in terms of support here in Australia.
Really? A setback for their cause? How about an affront to decency? How about pointing out it would be celebrating the slaughter of innocent Israelis? How about pointing out that it would therefore be an endorsement, if not an incitement, to terrorist violence?
It will be a sombre day for Jewish Australians, but for Jewish people everywhere, but for people as well who just regard human rights and decent human behaviour.
I guess he tried, kind of. But Albanese has been weak on this stuff for a full 2 years. Albanese, a former anti-Israel protester himself, has never called out the anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish rhetoric and violence the way he should have. And he's indirectly fueled the anti-Semitism by constantly demonising Israel, using the propaganda of Hamas to criticise Israel directly, take action against it diplomatically, and even ban Israeli visitors to this country at the same time, mind you, that he's welcomed Palestinians fleeing Gaza and the widows and children of ISIS terrorists. It's all deeply worrying, especially when we've had weekly protests in this country effectively calling for the elimination of Israel. Some protesters brandishing the emblems of terrorist groups and others chanting for the global intifada. Yeah, they cheer for intifada. Well, we've seen now how intifada operates in Israel over many, many years. It's often involved Islamist extremists driving their cars into Jewish people at bus stops or on footpaths, a trademark move of the terrorists who have also often stabbed Israeli soldiers, police and civilians. That is intifada Palestinian style. They've used gunfire and bombs too, but when the terrorists can't get their hands on guns or bombs, they use cars and knives. And any Australians chanting for intifada got to see what it means last week with that disgusting attack on Jews in the UK on their holiest day. One person was killed by the terrorist, a Syrian-born UK citizen. Another was shot dead by police in the mayhem, and 3 others are fighting for their lives. That's intifada being globalised for you. And yet listen to how the leader of our own Greens party talked about this on the ABC yesterday.
Look, my heart goes out to the families of those people. No violence anywhere is acceptable, and this is exactly why we need a resolution that is based on self-determination, and why Australia should have, 2 years ago, imposed serious sanctions on the Israeli government, who have been conducting a genocide and starving people, children. It is utterly appalling.
She is blaming the victims. The Greens leader tells lies about what Israel is doing in its war to defend itself, and she essentially blames Israel for the terrorism directed at Jews. And she sits in our Senate. Listen to Senator Waters on that ridiculous Gaza flotilla with Greta Thunberg on board.
That aid needs to get through, and I think it's appalling that it's taken global civilians to try to get food to Gaza. That should have been something that the Israeli government allowed to occur. There should not be a war of starvation.
Is she really that idiotic that she thinks this publicity stunt flotilla has the aid needed in Gaza? Does she not know how much aid has flowed in and is flowing into Gaza thanks to Israel? She talks about a war of starvation. In other words, she spouts lies, Hamas propaganda against Israel to stoke hatred. But if you wonder about her grasp on reality, have a listen to this answer about Australians involved in the flotilla.
And we need to make sure that the Australian ambassador in Gaza is getting those citizens back and shepherding them to safety. And our government should be doing everything it can to get our citizens home safely. Surely that's their one job.
She reckons we've got an ambassador in Gaza? Does she know anything about Gaza? We know Albo has recognised the non-existent state of Palestine. That's nutty enough. But the Greens leader thinks we'd have an ambassador in Gaza? What planet is she on? What does she think Hamas would do with an Australian diplomat in Gaza? Take them hostage? Behead them? Or have a cup of tea with them? It really makes you despair, doesn't it? But not to be outdone by this sort of intellectual and moral vacuum, listen to Greta Thunberg herself. Listen to what she says to the world after the Israelis intercepted the Gaza flotilla, saving the protesters from themselves.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I'm a citizen of Sweden. If you are watching this video, I have been abducted and taken against my will by Israeli forces. Our humanitarian mission was non-violent and abiding by international law.
Did she not even stop to consider how 20 Israeli hostages remain in captivity in Gaza after they really were abducted, and they're still in the hands of Hamas, where they've been abused and starved and used as propaganda props, where they've been held in an ongoing war crime for one day short of 2 years now? Did Greta stop to think of that, or the dozens of dead hostages whose bodies Hamas still holds as bargaining chips? No, real abductees don't matter to Greta, only her pretense about being abducted, while real hostages suffer, and she runs a campaign that only helps the propaganda campaign run by their captors. Sick stuff. Sick, but common throughout the West now. Tomorrow's anniversary marks 2 years of horror and pain, and 2 years of deliberate war started and continued by Hamas. But it also marks 2 years of false moral equivalence and lies and deception by much of the Western media and political class.